Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Archetype. Glad you're here for this one. Just like every shadow that we move through, this one doesn't mess around. So I want to start with something that's happened to me. I like story time as I'm doing these podcasts recently because I think that they really make a difference in understanding and digesting the information a little bit better. So in the last year or so, I have been dealing with this shadow and it makes me wince a little bit when I think about it. Here's the story. My partner said something small, technically small, that on paper you would file under not a big deal, except I caught them in it. Just a little lie, wasn't a devastating lie, not a thing, not the kind of thing that changes everything. Just a small thing that wasn't true, that was probably said in the moment to avoid discomfort, and I lost it. I did not calmly express my feelings. I lost it like something much older than the moment showed up and took the wheel. The anger was incredibly real, but it was also way too big for what had actually happened. And I could feel that even while it was happening. This strange awareness of this is not proportional running underneath my explosion. Side note, I'm an Aries moon, but I've got like a Libra stellium, so my Aries moon is very embarrassing to me when it rears its head. Not that Aries has anything to do with this Pisces gate, but my partner got quiet, and then I had to do the thing where you look at what you just did, and you're like, oh, that wasn't about a lie, was it? And I apologize. I probably still wait too long to repair genuinely, but I genuinely apologized. And because whatever they had done in the moment, my reaction had crossed a line too. And I always want to be looking at that. But then I sat with the question that Gene Key 22 always eventually asks, which is, what was I actually feeling before that lie gave me somewhere to put my emotions? So that question is what this episode is about. We're moving into a 6-day window where the sun is in gate / Gene Key 22, which is about surrender. And if you've been more raw than usual, maybe more reactive, or prone to replaying old conversations or feeling like nobody really sees you, that's not you falling apart. That is exactly what this shadow of 22 came to do. It's frustrating sometimes, but when we can see what's happening, when we can have some metacognition, right, about how we are thinking about our thinking, this gate moves from dishonor to grace. And the road between those two things runs directly through your emotional body. Not your thoughts about your emotions, your actual emotional body, the one that tightens up in your chest when someone dismisses you, the emotional body that can collapse a little when you don't feel supported, the one that's quietly keeping score of every moment that you were treated like you didn't matter. That is what this gate is working with. Woof. So let's go slowly. Gate 22 is called surrender in quantum human design. It's called grace in the traditional I Ching and the gate of grace in traditional human design. Every tradition has its own translation, just like the Bible, just like the Bhagavad Gita. So Gene Key 22 maps the journey from the shadow of dishonor all the way to this highest level, this city of grace, through the gift of graciousness. That's a big arc, so we want to break that down. The shadow is dishonor. When I say dishonor, I don't mean something obviously terrible. I mean the quieter version, the way we dishonor ourselves when we don't accept how we feel, when we blame the situation, blame the other person, or stuff it and then call it moving on. Dishonor is what happens when the emotional body doesn't get witnessed, not even by you. It shows up as reactivity, as drama that comes out of nowhere. It's that thing where someone says one thing slightly wrong and you feel like you've been slapped, even though logically you know that it wasn't that bad. That's the shadow running. It's emotional turbulence, but it has no container to hold it. And here's the part that matters for this gate for 22 specifically. Dishonor really likes to loop. It doesn't just happen once. It keeps circling back in relationships, in money stuff, in how we talk to ourselves until something intervenes, right? That something is accountability, not self-punishment, not the part of you that makes a list of everything wrong that you ever did and beats yourself up over the head with it. That's still dishonor. Just wearing a self-improvement costume, you know? Real accountability in this gate means being honest about your own state, about your internal state, without blame, without deflecting, without the story that makes someone else the villain so that you don't have to feel the actual feeling. And that is a lot harder than it sounds. The gift of 22 is graciousness, and I want to be clear about what that word actually means here, because it's not about being polished or composed or particularly well behaved. Graciousness is what happens when you are accountable for your own emotional state. When you've done enough inner work that you're not constantly bleeding your unprocessed feelings onto the people around you, but you're also not suppressing everything as well, right? In the name of keeping the peace. It's emotional intelligence that actually has some soul in it, you know? Gracious people still feel things deeply. They're not detached. They just don't require the people around them to manage their experience. They've learned to meet themselves first. And the thing about graciousness that I find genuinely moving is that it has a quality of warmth to it, softness. Not because life got easier, but because you stop fighting so hard against the way things are or the way things feel. You find equanimity, not a fake where you're performing calm. We've talked about that in, previous episodes, the real kind where you can hold both pleasure and without needing to escape either one. So big. That is a different nervous system that can do that. And it gets there through the body. Here's the biological piece. 22 sits in the emotional solar plexus in human design, or the solar plexus in Hindu mythology. Biologically, it corresponds to codon 22, which codes for proline. Proline is the amino acid that builds collagen. Just like last time, it's literally what holds you together. Your skin, joints, tendons, and blood vessels. It's the connective tissue of the body. It allows you to be mentally, emotionally flexible, also physically. When this gate is in distortion, you might actually feel rigidity, tightness, bracing. So we'll work through some of that in the tapping today. Any kind of armoring that lives in the physical structures, not just the mind, right? Emotionally, the distortion looks like scar tissue, old pain that's never been processed, so it hardened instead. And you can feel it when something relatively small triggers the shit out of it, or disproportionately, right? You get it. A large response that is not you overreacting. That's emotional scar tissue getting touched, and it reacts. On the other side, when proline is doing what it's designed to do, it gives you flexibility under pressure. The ability to move through stress without breaking, to be strong without being rigid, which is honestly a pretty perfect biological description of what grace feels like in the body. 22 also lives in the kidneys and the pancreas. The kidneys carry fear, specifically the fear of not being supported. And the pancreas is involved in how we process and regulate what we take in, right? What we release, what we hold. So if you're feeling more fearful than usual right now, or having trouble trusting that things will work out, or noticing energy fluctuations. That's not random. That is this gate moving through the body in the ways that it's supposed to over this 6-day period. Each day gets broken down into even smaller pieces, which maybe someday I'll do a daily podcast. The body is asking, can you stay open when you're not sure that you're supported? And then, as always, there's this karmic, ancestral, genetic type of layer that shows up a lot in the energy work sessions that I do. And I want to name it because some of you might be feeling this week some things that aren't even originally yours. This Gate 22 carries lineages of emotional suppression, right? Families where tenderness was unsafe, where expressing pain, whether it was physical, emotional, spiritual pain, was met with shame or dismissal. And then where survival strategy was just to endure, right? Quietly, stoically, without making a fuss about anything. And if that sounds familiar when you think about your family line, it might not just be your personal history, right? There might be something bigger that's going on here. And it might be something that was handed down to you. On a cultural level, this carries what Richard Rudd calls shame cultures, systems where mistakes or emotional suppression were absolutely treated as dishonor rather than with compassion, where the way through suffering was to hide it, to not feel it. So when this gate activates and your emotional body starts moving, when things feel tender or raw or disproportionately big, maybe, one of the things worth asking is, how much of this is mine? And how much of this is older? And you don't have to answer that question perfectly. Just holding it creates a little space, right? Again, it's metacognition, trying to pan out and see if you can think about how you're thinking. So what this could feel like over the next 6 days, you might notice that your emotional reactions are bigger than the situation warrants. Someone's tone of voice lands wrong, but you also might find yourself in moments where you suddenly have access to grace that surprises you. You know what I mean? So we don't always just want to be looking for the shadow, because honestly, we'll find it. Where we direct our focus, mirrors get held up. So we want to be looking for the good, right? We always want to be looking for the good. We want to look for moments around us that we feel supported by our loved ones, by our communities. We want to honor our own capacity to keep going, but we also want to honor when we need rest. Maybe it's time to get flat, touch grass. We don't want the background to be humming. I'm not sure I can trust this. We want to have as much grace means we trust. So if you find yourself replaying old dynamics, try to catch it as soon as you can. Not because you're stuck. 22 is trying to surface something that needs to be metabolized. But that can be good too. It's not always shadow. You also might find that you're more sensitive to beauty right now. What a wonderful fucking gift. To music, to kindness, to small moments that seem to land differently than usual. That is the grace frequency starting to move. So we absolutely don't want to dismiss that. That's so important. We want to celebrate those moments. So reactivity as information. If you snap, if you pull away, if you collapse into resentment, it's not failure. That's just shadow work, plain and simple. Showing you where a scar tissue still lives. Take notes. This is why my energy work sessions are so helpful. Notice the things that come up. Notice the beliefs that come up. You can change beliefs. You absolutely can. So also watch for the urge to be gracious on the outside while still dishonoring how you feel on the inside. That's suppression, wearing the gifts closed. So real graciousness starts with being honest about your own state before you ever attempt to manage anyone else's. And be sure to watch your relationship to being supported. Not just whether you feel supported, but whether you can actually receive when it's being offered. This gate teaches us that trust isn't just about other people. It's about your capacity to let good things land. I don't know about you guys, but this is an area that I really struggle with receiving, right? A lot of us are givers. We just like to give. Receiving makes us feel uncomfortable. It makes us feel maybe like we owe people. So that's its own separate work that needs to go on there too, right? That's the scar tissue. So here's the reframe. The things that I find about 22 that are clarifying. Surrender is not about giving up. It's not passivity. It's not collapsing. Surrender in this gate means stop fighting the emotional reality of your experience. Stop trying to logic your way out of your feelings. I am so good at this. So if you are also, raise your hand. Stop requiring yourself to have already processed something before you've actually processed it. You don't dishonor yourself by feeling deeply. Feelings aren't facts. Feelings are just information about the quality of your thoughts. And they actually don't do damage unless you don't let them move through you. They aren't good, bad, right, or wrong. They're just information. They're just helping you map your experience so that you can see where you are, so you can see where you want to go. And real graciousness isn't about being lovely and composed for everyone else. It starts with you inside, taking your own emotional experience seriously enough to actually be with it, to be able to sit with it. When we do that long enough, something shifts. That turbulence doesn't disappear, but you stop being at its mercy. You can feel the feeling without becoming the feeling. You can be moved without being swept away by the current of emotion. That's the gift, and it's not small. That's big. We're moving on to tapping. Let's integrate this into our nervous system. I'll see you in part B in just a sec.